A very warm good evening to one and all. First of all, a very big thank you to everyone for showing a keen interest in joining the session today. Without any delay, I, Rana Banu, coordinator of the placement and the training cell, on behalf of the entire team, would like to extend warm welcome to our resource person of the day, Ms. Stefania Pinto, for the first session of the Career Guidance Week on the topic Energy Law and Emerging Fields. I really miss that applause that you give after welcoming the guest. So, moving on, Ms. Stefania has completed her law degree from SDM Law College. After graduation, she worked as a contract analyst at Pramata for 2 months. For the past 1.5 years, she is an associate at Precinct Legal, Bengaluru, practicing regulatory litigation before KERC, Appellate Tribunal for Electricity, CERC, and before the Honorable High Court. She appears in cases related to electricity laws, power purchase disputes, interstate and intrastate generation, transmission and distribution disputes. A very enthusiastic and a friendly person who actively participates in all the programs conducted by our college, and indeed a proud alumna. It takes me immense pleasure to welcome you, ma'am, for today's session. I hope that this session would be very informative to all the participants. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you for the very generous introduction, Rana. Respected principal, respected sir, staff convener for placement cell, Santosh sir, the secretary for the placement cell, and the lovely conveners therein. So, and of course, everyone who has gathered here today. Um, Thank you so much for being here, and it's great to be back, although virtually. Um, so I think a lot has been said already about how you should be developing yourselves and developing the skills that you have. Now, the topic that is allotted to me is energy law and emerging law fields. You know, when you move out of college, you are faced with various law fields. So whenever I ask anyone who has just graduated, they usually tell me that, yeah, I probably want to do litigation. If I ask what kind of litigation you want to do, probably they'll say like civil or criminal, or most of them will opt for corporate, right? So when you even say civil or criminal, I understand the fact that a lot of y'all will be confused given the plethora of options outside. But it's always nice to narrow down your options and to know what you want to do once you graduate. That gives you an edge over the rest of the thousands of law graduates from various colleges. So before beginning, I would want to say one thing. Whatever I say, do not consider it as some kind of advice, because I am only speaking with my very limited experience. So whatever I say is out of my experience and out of the knowledge that I've gained in the past 1.5 years. So right now I'm practicing energy law. When I say energy law, there are two aspects to it. One is, you can say, oil and gas, and then there is electricity laws. So what I do is I practice electricity laws. I am based out of Bangalore right now. So my practice is mostly at KERC, Aptel, CERC, not that many matters, very few matters. But it's mostly focused at KERC, High Court, and Aptel. So again, when I say electricity laws, the basic understanding is that, okay, probably she's doing consumer disputes. So electricity laws again has different avenues, right? So either you could be on the consumer side of the litigation, which is, for example, probably you have some meter reading dispute, or you have, suppose you're billed wrongly, right? So such disputes will be dealt, such consumer disputes will be dealt before the CGRF, that is a Consumer Grievance Redressal Forum, and the appeals therefrom go to Electricity Ombudsman. So ombudsmen are situated in every distribution licensees area in the state of Karnataka. So again, before understanding electricity laws, what you need to understand is electricity has three sectors, all right? One is generation of power, then there's transmission of power, and then distribution, which is probably the entity that you will probably be more familiar with. Most of y'all might have heard of MESCOM, JESCOM, BESCOM, HESCOM, or SESC. These are the 5 distribution licensees in the state of Karnataka. So these are the ones providing you with power. So where does MESCOM, for example, in Mangalore, where does it source its power from? Where does it buy its power from? So there are various generators in the state of Karnataka and outside the state of Karnataka from whom they procure power. So to get this power, they enter into several power purchase agreements. Every year, in fact, the government sets out many tenders for establishment of power plants. Okay, these power plants, they increase by the year mainly because the demand for electricity keeps increasing, right? So when the demand increases, the number of power projects increases, the ESCOMs tend to enter into many more power purchase agreements. So now that you've understood what is the work of a generator, again, there's a transmitter in between. So transmitter is the one who gives you power from the generator to the distributor. So in Karnataka, we have KPTCL, who is the transmitter, Karnataka Power Transmission Corporation Limited. So that is the transmitter. Okay. So these are the 3 entities that you need to know when it comes to electricity. So earlier I had told you there are 2 aspects to litigation when it comes to electricity laws. One is the consumer side of disputes, which is dealt by CGRF and of course the electricity ombudsman. What I deal with is not that. It is the disputes that arise between generators, distributors, and transmitters. So again, I can give you an example for this. Recently, of late, we've been dealing with a lot of extension of time matters. Okay, so extension of time matters is basically when, say, a generator, say some solar generator, has entered into a power purchase agreement with MESCOM. Now, MESCOM is procuring certain amount of power. They're buying power from this power purchase generator. Now, this generator, not power purchase generator. Now, this generator has to establish its plant. It has to construct it, develop it, operate, maintain it, right? So once it constructs it, in that particular power purchase agreement, there will be a clause saying that you have to commission or you have to establish your project and it has to be up and running in 18 days from the day of signing of the agreement. Now, say that that generator has not been able to do that. What is the penalty, right? So one of the options is, of course, to extend the time limit to make 18 months as, say, 21 or 22 months, give them extra time to complete, or that again will be done under the force majeure clause. A force majeure clause is basically when, suppose they have been unable to commission the project because of uncontrollable or unforeseen circumstances, for example, act of God, or say they haven't received approvals from the government on time, which is mostly in this case. The cases that we deal with, the government authorities may have delayed, or so basically in those cases, they'll come before KERC, which is the State Electricity Regulatory Commission. Now, the State Electricity Regulatory Commission deals with all these disputes. In Karnataka, it's called as KERC. It deals with all the intrastate disputes in generation, distribution, and transmission, and of course, tariff-related matters. So that is what the KERC does. So they'll come before KERC, they'll file a petition, and they'll probably request for an extension of time. Depending on the credibility of the submissions, they may be granted, they may not be granted. Now, suppose they lose the matter, all right, they lose the matter, where do they appeal to? They appeal to Appellate Tribunal for Electricity. So Appellate Tribunal for Electricity is the appellate authority constituted under the Electricity Act 2003, and it is situated in Delhi. So there's only one circuit bench for APTEL right now, and that's where the appeals go to. So if you enter into this profession, probably you'll be practicing at Delhi as well. Now, APTEL again deals with both oil and gas matters and electricity matters as well. Then of course, again, you lose your matter at APTEL, you can always appeal to the Supreme Court. Again, there's a fourth forum that can also deal with these matters. And of late, the High Court of Karnataka has also been dealing with a lot of electricity matters. But you must be knowing that in all appeals should ideally lie with the appellate authority that is specifically constituted for that purpose. So you should not be going before the High Court directly, right? Because you have an efficacious alternative remedy that the statutory act is giving you. But recently, the Supreme Court, in one of the cases, that is Roger Matthew, I believe, they have said that in case the appellate tribunal does not have a circuit bench in your state, you can approach the High Court, because it is probably a little more difficult for someone in Karnataka to go all the way to Delhi to file an appeal. So certain reliefs have been provided by the Supreme Court in this manner. Again, I've told you about the different practice areas where you can practice: KERC, APTEL, High Court of Karnataka. And again, of course, there's also CERC. I did not tell you all about CERC. CERC, Central Electricity Regulatory Commission. Now, the CERC deals with interstate. Suppose the power purchase is happening between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, right? These aspects will be dealt by CERC. Now, both KERC and CERC are not just adjudicatory bodies, they also are regulatory bodies. Regulatory bodies, as in they also determine your tariff, the amount you pay in your bills, right? So every slab, there is a certain tariff involved. So for it, maybe tariff can also differ for, if it's a solar project, it'll be this much tariff. For a wind power project, it'll be certain tariff. So all such disputes and also determining the tariff, that is what the commissions do. So that is what your work you'll be primarily dealing with if you join this sector. So there's plenty of opportunities when it comes to electricity law. I know that it's not a traditionally taught subject in your college, and I came across it by luck, and I'm very glad that I did come across it. And I'm still very fairly new into the field, but I think that's the beauty of it, right? So there's not a lot of litigators who do this field. There's extremely few of them, and it's always nice to know or know certain knowledge that not a lot of lawyers would know, that gives you an edge over them. So yeah, now what are the laws that you need to know? This is not a subject that you can just open the act and you can read and you'll know what it is. That is perhaps not the way to go about it. And even if you open a judgment, you'll probably feel slightly, will not understand the terms, because this subject is slightly technical, and you need to have that kind of interest in this to grasp the subject. It is not something that you learn overnight or over a period of week. Only through practice will you truly learn this subject. But it's always good to have a very strong knowledge of the Contract Act. If you are very good at Contract Act, you'll be dealing with a lot of agreements. And you should probably have the knack for slightly technical things. If you love subjects like jurisprudence or like international law, certain subjects like that, I'm quite sure that you like a subject like practicing this. Now, how do you enter into this field, right? So right now, my senior, he's empaneled with the distribution licensees, that is a distribution licensee and transmission licensees in Karnataka. So we get our cases from all the ESCOMs or KPTCL, and we proceed in a similar way. Now, you can either work like this, you can work for some advocate, or you yourself can get an empanelment if you are credible enough with one of the ESCOMs. They'll give you plenty of matters. And the second way is you could represent, you could probably work for the generators, of course. You can name a lot of private generators, like there's Tata Power, there's Adani, there's Renew Power. So you could work with them. You could either be like a legal associate or like an in-house counsel in one of those companies, or you could also, be associated with a law firm, and you could carry on your practice on advising these generators on how to set up these projects. Now, again, energy projects are not ordinary contracts. These are high stake contracts, right? These are expensive contracts. So the amount of clarity, not just clarity, accuracy, efficiency that you need, you have to be very focused, right? So these are a part of, I can say, infrastructure contracts. If you like this, whatever I've spoken about, you should definitely look at infrastructure law. Now, the field of infrastructure law is booming right now because, say, examples would be establishing an airport. You might think, okay, probably the government is just establishing this airport. No, projects like highways, airports are usually executed through PPPs, which is public private partnerships. So these contracts are entered into to increase the efficiency basically, and to increase the, the financing, project financing part will also become easier because the private sector will be involved. So there, the private sector's qualities, like, for not qualities, you know uh, the positives of the private sector. For example, they'll be very good at developing or in construction or operation and maintenance of the airport, and the government will be in a much better position to, deal with right of way issues, or um, right of way issues, or say, land related issues. Obviously the government will be in a much better position to handle it. So that is why they enter into PPPs. So these contracts require a lot of lawyers with that specialized knowledge, and it's a booming sector. In fact, all the big law firms in India have a project finance team, or they will have, regulatory practice, is because the remuneration in this also is quite great. So those are the different sectors that you could practice in. Again, if you want to work for the government, you could write CLAT, your common law admission test. I think that's what it's expanded for. So you can write CLAT, and several energy companies like NTPC, which is the National Thermal Company, and then there's SECI, Solar Energy Corporation of India, then there's PGCIL, Power Grid Corporation. These companies, even GAIL, ONGC, all of them recruit through CLAT. So you can always write CLAT and work for the public sector utilities. So that is another way you can get into the sector.
Stephanie, I had a question.
Yeah,
You
go ahead.
said we could write CLAT and we could infrastructure thing. So CLAT before LLB or after LLB, the LLM CLAT, or how
I
does
think
that
the
work?
LLM CLAT. I'm quite sure it's the
Okay,
LLM. Yeah.
okay.
Um,
Based on the ranking, is it? Or
Based on
how?
the ranking, they themselves will approach you,
Okay, fine.
or you could submit your applications. In fact, like, I think a lot of them roll out applications every month. So
Okay,
if you, yeah, every month they roll out applications, and the jobs are
okay.
just increasing in that sector. So if you,
And what's your opinion? Like LLM people have a upper hand in it, or it's fine without LLM also? Like,
nothing as such. I mean, it's not a necessity to do LLM, but it's always good to have knowledge, right? There's nothing bad to it. That's what I believe. Um, that depends on your preference. If you want to do an LLM, great job. And in some of these companies, they do require an LLM. Again, it depends on what company you want to apply for. It's not mandatory, I believe.
thank you.
Welcome.
And do you think these have a scope in international level also?
Definitely, because see, when we speak about a power project, right? Say an Indian generator is awarded the contract. Now they will want to set up a, say, example, solar power project. Uh, the modules that they get, the solar modules that they import, will usually be from, say, China, Malaysia, or something. So when you're importing, again, there are different contracts involved. Second thing will be the finances. They usually work on a 70-30 ratio, that is debt to equity. Now, equity, they themselves might put the debt. Usually, the investors will be from various parts of the world. So, in that way, in that sense, yes, international laws will also be involved. Again, that's probably on the corporate side more. So, it's best if you get into the project finance team or something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, hi Stefania. So I have a
Hi.
small question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how is the work process right now during the pandemic? So may I know that? like work
Okay.
from home. So how is it going about? Because you don't have to go to court and all. So how is the work process right now?
Okay, it's a good question. Because ever since the pandemic, when it started off back in March, even the courts were quite puzzled as to what to do, because you can't just not have proceedings and have the already existing backlog will only increase because of the ongoing pandemic. So they were also forced to get out of their comfort zone and then establish video conference hearings. So the court said, I practice it. All of them have video conference hearings. Of course, the trial courts, again, they could not have it because there are several stages like evidence involved in which you cannot really have video conference, but they still made some exceptions and they had these video conference hearings at that point of time. Even now, for that matter, say CERC or Aptil, they have, even for filing, I do not have to go all the way to Delhi and present something to them. They have e-filing. So they've developed that. And I've noticed that most of these Delhi courts have the concept of e-filing, which is so great because it's extremely convenient to not get out of your house. But again, after a point, they will ask, say, e-filing also, after a point, they'll ask you for the hard copies. But at least, to the peak time in the pandemic, you will not have to face anything like that. Yeah, so that's how most of them are working during the pandemic. And right now, there is a court vacation. So the Karnataka courts are shut for some time, except, of course, your criminal courts.
There are a few questions for you
Yeah.
in the chat, friends.
Okay. As we don't have electricity law in our syllabus, is it necessary to have any particular certificate as such? Nothing at all. In fact, me too. I was a contract analyst at a certain company, which was great. In fact, if that it depends on if you really like the work there. But I always wanted to try litigation, so I just randomly interviewed in places, and electricity law just struck me by chance. You cannot really prepare for it as such, but what you could do is intern in places. I could also recommend certain places for you to intern in. That's the only way you can know anything about the field. Or you could, if you really have that much interest, just open the Electricity Act 2003. Then there are several regulations, but if you read the state regulations, I'm quite sure that you'll end up very confused because you'll have to know certain terms to even read those regulations. In fact, even now, I find certain concepts very complicated, like not very complicated. They can be a little tricky to understand. There's several concepts in electricity, like this open access, this banking. If you would read the banking regulations, you would look at it in finance terms, right? But banking of electricity is something that is completely different. It's just storage of electricity, right? So you don't need any certificate as such to enter this field. You just need to find a good mentor. That goes without saying, honestly. It's not only restricted to energy law. You anywhere you go, don't look at the place where you're working at. What is important is who you're working for and whether they are ready to teach you or not. So that is obviously much more important. But if you do want to learn about energy law, there are several courses online. If you want to have a head start and if you want to have an edge over probably the other few people who are really interested in this sector, then definitely. In fact, I am also pursuing a course right now. Side by side, it's always good to upskill yourself, right? There's a project finance course that is offered by DSK Legal. Then I think Glossic also has several courses on electricity law, just the basics. Yeah. Sumati Babi, I think. She's asking me if I can elaborate on what kind of disputes are actually dealt with. You'll be in a better position to understand if I just tell you all. Like earlier, I told you that there are extension of time cases. Similarly, we've been dealing with wheeling and banking matters, open access matters. One of the major issues that we've been dealing with is with the imposition of safeguard duty on the solar modules. So, because that was treated as a change in law, right? So everyone who entered into a power purchase agreement, right? After that, if so they had to bear certain taxes and they were paid a certain tariff as per whatever calculations they had given. Now, the capital cost was, say, there was a certain amount to it that was fixed in the contract. But post entering the agreement, what happened was safeguard duty was imposed. So they had to incur additional duty on import of those solar modules. Now, what happens to that? Will they get refunded by the ESCOMs? Who has to bear that liability? So that is one of the matters that we've dealt with. And there's renewable power obligation. So RPO is when a distribution licensee, or whenever they're procuring from power, it is mandatory for them to purchase a percentage of that power, and it has to be from renewable sources. You have you have your conventional source and you have a non-conventional. Similarly, renewables, you'll have your hydro, solar, wind, biomass, certain power sources like that. Certain percentages, of course, reserved. So there are certain disputes, non-compliance of RPO, right? If you do not procure certain amount of power to that extent, then you'll be penalized. For that, again, the KERC will interfere on, not interfere, they'll deal with such disputes. So those are certain disputes that we deal with. I hope that answers your question. And again, one more thing that I would want to add is, because it's a very recent sector, right? So the number of people dealing with this law are also very few. And the beauty of it is because even Electricity Act came up in 2003, right? So we are growing with the act. So the amendments that are happening, the law is being interpreted right now. So everyone is very new to this process. Even most of the times, the judges will not know how to interpret a certain regulation. So the lawmaking process is happening through the years, and there is a certain beauty to that process because you're getting to witness it at this point when the sector is still very young. And yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to know more about internship opportunities in this field. Do we have to directly approach them, or opportunities available to be an intern in these places? So
Okay. So, if you're a simple Google search away from your answer, by the way. So just type top energy law firms in India. You will get a list of these 10 firms. Just apply every single place. As an intern, you do not have the opportunity to just expect a reply from one law firm. You can't just apply in one law firm and expect, that firm to give you that opportunity. And whenever you're drafting a certain email to asking for that opportunity, make sure you mention that I want to work in this team. I want to work with this person. That'll make it look like, make it look like, oh, you know what you want, right? You know who you want to work with, and you'll have a greater chance of getting into that firm. So if I could name, you could obviously choose to work with either the law firms, or as in these huge companies, power companies, or you can always, if you want to work with distribution licensees, again, there's, I think in Bangalore, there's Just Law. We are also we have a extensive practice in Jeet, and there's those are the two places I can think of who are empaneled with distribution licensees. And then in the private sector, in like big law firms, you have JSA, HSA. HSA has a very extensive practice in energy law. But I'm not sure if they have a team in Bangalore that deals with it. But JSA has quite a big team in terms of this project finance and also regulatory litigation. There's DSK Legal, there's Shardul Amarchand, there's, those are, most of these firms have this practice. You just need to, there's a list of top 10 firms where you can, can have a glance at that.
thank you.
Welcome.
Stefania, I have few series of questions for you.
Yes.
One is there any scope for intellectual property rights in energy law, like patents in renewable energy or something like that?
Very tricky question. Again, when you say patent, it's very like science related. When it comes to energy law, I don't think, I am unaware if there's, a correlation between IPR and the energy sector, especially in where I practice, not really.
Okay. And could you share your internship experience during the college days? Because nowadays they say that you should be area specific. From third year, you should start interning from, in the places where you might to possibly work. So is that how you did, or how was it? How was your experience?
See, to be honest, when obviously, I understand a lot of law firms ask you to be area specific. Oh, yes, you should know what you want to do. But when you are introduced with your law subjects in third year, there's really not much much of an opportunity to really be specific to what you want. You'll be only knowing basics in law. Your third year law subjects, I believe, are really basics. I think it's being introduced even in second year right now, right? So it is difficult to know what you want, but you can know what you want by increasing your internship. So you should probably, if I had the opportunity to, go through law school again, I would probably do it this way. In my third year, I would choose, like, say, not tier one, because they wouldn't offer a third year law student just like that any internship. So I would probably go to some mentor who will probably tell me, okay, this is there. This is what is available. Maybe go to a place and don't just say, I want to intern in this team only. Don't restrict yourself in your third year. Understand what your options are, because at that point you'll probably be confused, corporate or litigation. And figuring that out in itself will take you 2 good internships. Your fourth year final internship is where you have to be very specific about what you want. All right, your fourth year final, or your first final year first internship, first semester internship, that is your most important internship in case you're looking at a pre-placement offer. So certain law firms will offer you a PPO even before you're graduating. That's the dream, right? I mean, ideally that's the dream. So
Yes.
yeah, so to land a PPO, you have to have an edge over so many students that are applying. What I would suggest is, in your final year and your fourth year, before you get that final internship where you want to land a PPO, make sure that you've already interned in that sphere. If not, you've done some course in that sphere, or whatever research work is giving, actively do it. Do not slack off in what they give, because they are genuinely looking at potentially to hire you in your final semester. So try to not slack off and really engage with the associate who's giving you work. Go and ask for personal feedback. Did I do well? What did I do wrong? So these are the few things that gives you an edge over the rest of the interns. I can understand it can be quite difficult and very intimidating to intern in these big law firms, but yeah, you have to be strong through it. And yeah.
Do you think publishing papers and writing articles, gets us the edge over other students? And is it important to get these PPOs and everything?
See, you know what? Everyone has their own way. Do not stress yourself so much through law school that, yes, I want to land a PPO. I want to do this. Maybe after final year, you'll want to do taxation, you'll end up doing IPR. You never know what happens after your graduation, right? Maybe you will start litigation and you'll get, so imagine you get a PPO, you land that big law firm job, right? What happens after that? Are you mentally strong to cope up with the pressure that they're going to give you in your first year? Right? You need to be it's not just about knowing the laws, it's about mentally coping with the stress that might be waiting for you at the end of 5 years. Because throughout your 5 years, throughout your education, you are kind of someone, right? But when you get out of law, you're at the bottom of the chain again. So that is where the real pressure lies. Take it easy. I'm not saying ignore the fact that, just ignore any PPOs, that the chance of a PPO. Work hard at it. It is important to write your papers. It is important to do moots. It's better to, any recruiter, if faced with 2 resumes which does not have moots and which does not have papers, which does not have you actively engaging in anything, will not prefer your CV over someone who has everything in their CV, right? So if you worked hard through your 5 years and if you've written papers, especially in the field that you want to land up in, then that's obviously an added advantage.
Thank you, Stefania.
Welcome.
Thank you, Stefania, for joining us.
Welcome.
Thank you.